We are broadcasting live from the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is a public institution open to all, where anyone is welcome to participate, collaborate, and learn more about the African American history and culture. In the words of Lonnie G. III, founding director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, there are a few things as powerful and as important as a people, as a nation, and that is steeped in its history. We are broadcasting live from the National Museum of African American History and Culture. My name is Lance. Have a great day.
Welcome to the Elliott High Network. My name is Princess Courtney. Today we will be interviewing John W. Franklin. Millions of people will walk through the entrance of this great museum. What do you hope people will take away from this experience and learning about our culture?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to answer your question and to be interviewed by you. Millions of people will come to this museum each year, and we want them to have the opportunity to learn about African American history and culture, as complex as it is. Sometimes we're only taught about Black history in February, but we know that the history is more important than just February. And what we're trying to do is help people understand how African American history and culture is American history and culture. Ideally, when they leave here, I want them to go wherever they are at home and learn more about African American history and culture where they live, whether it's in a different state or in a different city or even a different country. 12.5 million Africans were brought to the Americas. So there are Africans in Brazil, in the Caribbean, in South America, in Central America, and Canada. And we want people to be curious and learn more.
Which exhibit do you like the most and why?
I have been working for the last 6 years with one of the curators named Paul Gargiulo on an exhibition that involves my family story. It's in an exhibition called The Tower of Place. It's on the 3rd floor in the community section. And we tell the story of a Black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My great-grandparents arrived in Oklahoma as slaves to American Indians, Chickasaw Indians. And we were Black cowboys and Black ranchers. My grandfather, my father's father, was the first of the family to go to college. And he went to college in 1899. While he was in college, petroleum was discovered. And Oklahoma became a rich state. And American Indians and African Americans who had land where they found petroleum became wealthy. And that led to a creation of a neighborhood called Greenwood in Tulsa, which was a thriving Black business community with hotels and restaurants and banks and lawyers' offices. And my grandfather opened his law office in Tulsa. And on May 31st, June 1st, 1921, that entire Black community was burned to the ground. Many people were killed. And so we tell the story of that exhibition on the 3rd floor. And I've been able to work with the curator to help collect photographs, oral histories, and artifacts that help us tell the story. So that's why it's my favorite. I gave my grandfather's typewriter, and there's a picture of him in the exhibition. That's why it's my favorite. It tells part of my family story.
This broadcast has been brought to you by the Elliott High Network and Eastern Senior High School. My name is Princess Courtney. Thank you, John W. Franklin.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
What do you think about what you've seen so far?
I think when I'm saying it's amazing because what they've done and how do they put our history in place, like all the steps in the process of how the slaves and all the stuff that we did. So I think it's amazing that the way they did it.
How does it make you feel? You're going to go back and tell your peers that they definitely need to come see this?
Yes, it makes me feel sad about the stuff that happened, but excited about how the way they represented it. And I'm gonna definitely tell my friends to have to see it when it opens.
Joining us today will be Dr. K. Bridges. Which exhibit do you like the most and why?
Thank you, Princess, for this opportunity. And what I would say in walking through the museum thus far, my favorite exhibit is there's a section of the slavery exhibit down here on this bottom level that talks about the importation of slaves to the low country of South Carolina. And I'm a child of the low country of South Carolina. I grew up in Beaufort, South Carolina, actually outside of Beaufort. And so that really resonated with me because I know that some of the slaves they're talking about in that exhibit are ancestors of mine. So that was the one that really stuck with me the most.
Thank you. Okay. In your opinion, why is it good for America to embrace the history and culture of African Americans?
Well, African American history is American history. And so you can't talk about the history of America and the rich tapestry of this country from before its founding to from Plymouth Rock to now without a strong thread of the African American experience. So what we're seeing here is not just African American history, it's American history, which is why it's so important for us to honor this work.
Thank you for giving Elliott High Network the chance to interview you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
This broadcast has been brought to you by the Ellie High Network. I'm Nafisa Weeks. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is the only national museum devoted exclusively to the documentation of African American life, history, and culture. It was established by Act of Congress in 2003, following decades of efforts to promote and highlight the contributions of African Americans. To date, the museum has collected more than 36,000 artifacts. Nearly 100,000 individuals have become charter members of the museum. When the National Museum of African American History and Culture opens on September 24, 2016, it will be the 19th and the newest museum of the Smithsonian Institution. This broadcast has been brought to you by the Ellie High Network and Eastern High School. Have a great day. This broadcast is being brought to you live by the Elliott High Network. I am your host, Nafisa Weeks. Joining us as a special guest is Dr. Lamont Hill.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Millions of people walk through the entrance of this great museum. What do you hope people will take away from this experience and learning about our culture?
I hope people realize that Black people have contributed to every part of American life, not just music, not just religion, but every single thing that America is about, we have a piece of it. And I hope people walk away understanding how complex and how interesting and how beautiful our tradition is.
Which exhibit do you like the most and why?
You know, I grew up watching television, so when I saw the television exhibit and I got to see the whole history of TV and Black people's role in it, from Empire last year all the way back through the Jeffersons and Sanford and Son, all the way back to Flip Wilson, it brought back memories, but it also taught me how strong our tradition is and how it connects from the old days to the new days. We all have a similar culture and a similar tradition within the African American community.
This broadcast has been brought to you by the Ellie High Network and Eastern High School. My name is Nafisa Weeks. Have a great day. Welcome to the Elliott Hine Network. My name is Lance Spencer. We are broadcasting live from the National Museum of African American History and Culture in the Oprah Winfrey Theater. Joining me today as a guest is Mr. Burt Jackson. Mr. Burt Jackson, can you please tell me what you did for the museum?
Oh, it would be my pleasure to tell you my role. Again, my name is Burt Jackson, and I'm a senior project manager for Davis Brody Bond Architects. And our office is located here in Washington, D.C. We were one of 4 architectural firms that were responsible for designing and helping to build this museum. And I think the intent of the entire museum is to share with all people the dynamic history of African Americans in this country. I think so often many people tend to forget about history. We see the things that are on TV today, or our sports figures or entertainment heroes today, but our culture goes way, way back, hundreds of years. So what I'm hoping people will take away is a piece of history that they can reflect on as they go forward in their daily lives after visiting this museum. Hoping to have learned something, to take away and take an opportunity after they leave to maybe research a little bit more on their own about a very fantastic cultural experience.
Which exhibit do you like most and why?
Wow, that is a very hard question for me to answer. There are over 35,000 pieces of artifacts in this museum. For one thing, I'm an amateur musician, so I kind of like some of the things that are up in the music and history and cultural section of the museum. But also, as part of my own history, my father was involved in World War II, and his efforts supported the Tuskegee Airmen. So in the history gallery, suspended from the ceiling, is an airplane that was actually used by the Tuskegee Airmen to train African American pilots during World War II. I think that's probably one of my favorites.
Okay. What type of interactive exhibits do you have with the National Museum of African American History?
Wow. Well, I think that's also a fantastic question. I say a vast majority of the exhibits are in themselves interactive. One of the things you'll find are statues of historic figures that are strategically placed throughout the museum. So the fact that you can actually stand next to and touch some of these lifelike statues of people who primarily we only reference in history books, I think that's a fantastic thing. But then there's also some technology, interactive technology that you'll find not only in the history gallery, but soon to come up on the second floor of the museum, which will be digital reference and touch screen devices that actually let you go through African American history and interact with those devices. In fact, the devices that are down on the history gallery are actually embedded into a lunch counter top that would resemble some of the lunch counters during the sit-ins in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement.
This broadcast has been brought to you by the Elliott Hine Network. I am Lance Spencer.